Silence. That is all that remained. The waters had finally receded. The great drowning roar that had swallowed the world for 9 days and 9 nights was gone. Now there was only the sound of dripping, water sliding off the leaves of drowned trees, water trickling through the cracks of broken mountains. The earth smelled of salt and rot and old mud. High above, on the peak of Mount Parnassus, 2 figures huddled together. Deucalion and Pyrrha, the last 2 humans alive. They were not heroes. They were survivors, shivering, terrified specks on a dead planet. They looked out at the world Zeus had cleansed. It was a graveyard of silence. No birds sang, no wolves howled, just the gray, flat mud stretching to the horizon. An oracle had whispered to them, "Throw the bones of your mother behind you." They understood. The earth was their mother. The stones were her bones. And so with trembling hands they picked up the cold, wet rocks from the mud. They covered their eyes. They threw the stones over their shoulders. And where the stones fell, something twisted. The mud began to bubble. The hard rock softened, turning into warm flesh. The veins of the stone became the veins of men. The dust became hair. From the silence of the rocks, a new humanity pulled itself up from the dirt. But these men were not like the Golden Age. They were born from hard stone. They were born into a broken world. They were tough. They were desperate. And above all, they were cold. Zeus sat on his throne of clouds watching. He saw them down there, crawling in the caves, hiding from the night. He had drowned the wicked, yes, but he had not given the survivors a gift. He had stripped them of everything. There was no fire in this new world. The nights were long and pitch black. The humans ate their meat raw, tearing at it with teeth that chattered from the frost. They huddled together in the deep caves, terrified of the shadows, terrified of the wind, terrified of the beasts that hunted in the dark. To Zeus, this was perfect order. Humanity was on its knees. They were not rivals. They were pets, dependent, weak. But on Olympus, the hearth fires burned bright. The gods feasted in halls of gold, warmed by eternal flames that danced and cracked. Prometheus, the titan who thought too much, watched the fires. And then he looked down at the dark, freezing earth. He felt a pang in his chest, a dangerous feeling, pity. He knew the cost of defiance. He had seen the titans thrown into the pit. He knew Zeus's paranoia was a razor's edge, but he could not watch the children of the stone freeze. He waited for the dead of night, when the sky was a bruised purple and the eyes of the king were turned away. He took a hollow stalk of fennel. He crept to the central hearth of the gods, the sacred fire that belonged to Zeus alone. With a silent prayer, he touched the stalk to the coals. A spark, a tiny breathing orange jewel. He hid it inside the plant. Then he ran. He descended the mountain carrying a star in his hands. Down below, the first fire was lit. It started as a flicker in a cave, then a beacon, then a village. The humans stared at the orange light in wonder. They felt the warmth kiss their frozen skin. They cooked their food. They forged bronze. For the first time, they pushed back the night. They were no longer animals. They were becoming something else. When high above, Zeus saw the smoke rising. He did not scream. He did not throw his lightning. He simply went cold. The betrayal was absolute. His friend, his cousin, the one who had helped him win the war. Zeus realized then that love was a weakness, and he cut it out of his heart forever. The punishment had to be as eternal as the crime. He called upon his enforcers, Kratos, strength, and Bia, violence. They dragged Prometheus to the very edge of the world, to the Caucasus Mountains, a place of jagged black rock and screaming winds. They did not kill him. Death is too quick for a god. They took chains forged by Hephaestus, chains that could bind the ocean itself, and they hammered them into the rock, through Prometheus's wrists, through his ankles. Imagine the silence of that mountain, Prometheus bound tight against the freezing stone, unable to move, unable to sleep, and then the sound, not a screech, but a deep, rhythmic whoosh, the displacement of air. A shadow fell over him, massive, ancient. The eagle of Zeus descended. It did not hate him. It was just an animal doing its job. It landed on his chest, heavy and warm, and it began to feed. Pain, absolute blinding pain, but Prometheus could not die. Every night under the cold light of the moon, his flesh knitted itself back together. His liver regrew. The wound closed, just in time for the sun to rise, just in time for the eagle to return. This was Zeus's message to the universe. Do not love the humans. Do not help them, or you will be the rock and I will be the bird. But Zeus was not done. Punishing the thief was not enough. He had to punish the receivers of the stolen goods. He had to punish humanity. But he couldn't just drown them again. That was too simple. He wanted them to suffer. He wanted them to destroy themselves. So he went to his forge. He ordered Hephaestus to create a work of art. Make it beautiful, he whispered. Make it irresistible. Hephaestus took earth and water. He mixed clay with the sweetness of honey. He shaped a woman. She was perfect. Her skin was like polished marble, but warm to the touch. Her eyes held the depth of the sea. Athena dressed her in a silvery gown. Aphrodite poured grace upon her head like perfume. Hermes gave her a voice and a deceitful heart. They named her Pandora, the all-gifted. But she was not a gift. She was a biological weapon. Zeus gave her a jar, a heavy earthen jar, sealed with wax. Take this, he told her, but never, ever open it. He knew she would. He had designed her to be curious. He had programmed the flaw into her mind. He sent her down to Epimetheus, the brother of Prometheus, the foolish brother. Prometheus had warned him, never accept a gift from Zeus. But Epimetheus looked at Pandora. He saw her beauty. He saw her innocence, and he forgot the warning. He took her into his home. The jar sat in the corner of the room. It hummed. Pandora tried to ignore it, but the curiosity was like an itch in her brain. It whispered to her in the silence of the night, "What is inside? Gold? Ambrosia? The secrets of the gods?" One afternoon, when the house was quiet, she couldn't resist. She knelt before the jar. Her fingers traced the wax seal. She didn't want to do harm, she just wanted to know. She gripped the heavy lid. She lifted it. It was not a loud explosion, it was a sigh. A cold, damp wind rushed out of the jar, and with it, the darkness. They didn't look like monsters. They looked like smoke, like shadows. Sickness drifted out, heavy and gray, settling into the lungs of the sleeping men. Old age crawled out, withering the flowers as it passed. Jealousy, greed, spite, madness. 10,000 invisible shapes, swarming out of the jar, flying out the windows, spreading across the earth like a plague. Pandora gasped. She tried to slam the lid shut. Her hands fumbled. She pressed the heavy stone back down onto the rim. Silence returned, but the room felt empty. The evils were gone. They belonged to the world now. She put her ear to the jar. Inside, trapped under the lid, there was one thing left, a small, fragile fluttering, like the wings of a butterfly against glass. Hope. Zeus had trapped hope inside, because he knew that if humans had hope, they would keep suffering. They would keep trying. They would endure the sickness and the death, thinking it might get better. Hope was the final cruelty, the thing that extends the torture. And high on Olympus, Zeus finally smiled. The world was quiet again. His rivals were chained. His subjects were poisoned. His throne was secure. He was the king of the gods, the savior, the father. But as he looked out at the universe he had broken, he was also finally alone.